Meta's come out with a new recommendation when it comes to the ideal Facebook ads audience size. Now, Meta isn't usually anywhere near as clear with their recommendations as this, and I think this represents a big Facebook ads targeting change, and we're going to need to adjust our approach as advertisers to accommodate this. So Meta's released documentation with their new audience size recommendations, and it is somewhat different to what I have recommended before, so we absolutely have to discuss this. So here's the article from Meta that I'm referring to, and this is basically a documentation that's trying to convince advertisers to use broad targeting. It's literally got broad targeting at the title. It's talking about reaching more people, and they give a number of reasons why you would want to use broad targeting. For example, on average 12% less in terms of cost per action by using broad targeting. Broad targeting, by the way, for anyone that's not familiar, is simply not including any detailed targeting options, any lookalikes, anything that narrows down an audience. So just allowing Meta to work out who within the total potential population within the area that you're actually targeting, who within that should receive your ads and who should not, and what's likely to deliver the best results. So if then we continue to scroll down, we get to this really interesting section here where the recommendation is set your audience to reach more than 2 million. Now, I've given recommendations around the ideal Facebook ad audience size before, and I've said things like you don't really want to go beneath 500,000 people. In an ideal world, you wouldn't have this estimated audience size below 500,000 people. And I've been much more concerned about not making an audience too small as opposed to it being too big. A lot of people say, well, how big can it be on the upper end? And my response is often, we don't really worry about that. We will often use open targeting, broad targeting, and just target everyone. And if we're doing that, say US wide, that's going to be 250 million people. So we don't really worry about an upper limit, but we've always been concerned with a lower limit because we know that audiences that are too small don't perform as well. What's really interesting is that Meta have really upped their recommendation in terms of it's not 500,000 anymore or 250,000 like it used to be a number of years ago. Now it's 2 million plus, which is really quite a large Facebook ads audience, much larger than we would have typically targeted 5, 6, 7 years ago, let's say. So Meta do provide a little bit more context in here as to why it needs to be 2 million plus if you can. I'll explain a bit more about that in a second. So they say here, our ad delivery system works best when your audience size is greater than 2 million people. So it's to help their delivery system, more people to advertise to, more flexibility. They can work out who within that audience is best to advertise to, what time of day. They're not forced to advertise to a specific number of people, which may only be on the platforms at certain times a day and all that sort of stuff, right? So more flexibility with the delivery system. But they do also go on to say, so set up your ad to target the widest audience possible that makes sense for your business. That's not the widest audience possible, it's the widest audience possible that makes sense for your business. So it's not necessarily always just going with advertising to absolutely everyone. That's a really important distinction. So the important message here is don't do anything that doesn't make any sense for your business. Don't advertise in an area where you can't actually serve the people that you're advertising to. That makes no sense. Don't think that the 2 million plus recommendation is that important. I also wouldn't worry too much if there are targeting options that you think make sense for your business, that sound really interesting, and those are beneath the 2 million. Let's say you're not a local business, but you advertise nationally and there's an interest targeting option that you want to test that's 1 million or 800,000. Absolutely fine to go ahead and test that. You may well see that it produces better results. It's also worth noting that in some countries where the population is relatively small, you may well be beneath 2 million once you add in some very basic narrowing criteria, things like age, gender criteria, that sort of stuff may take you beneath that level. So don't worry about it too much. This recommendation is more interesting for those advertisers that have the ability to target much larger audiences or smaller audiences or somewhere in between. Given this new information from Meta, I think it makes more sense to prioritize those larger audiences, and you may well already have done that and be seeing that those produce the best results. But if you haven't, definitely test some larger audiences, test some open targeting, see how it performs. Given Meta's recommendation, I think it's likely to perform better than some of the smaller targeting options. That's what we've been seeing within our agency, and we've seen that trend for a number of years, and I'd expect that to continue as Meta's machine learning processes and AI get better and better at identifying who within the target audience is most likely to take your desired action and most likely to get you the best results. And there's something else that I want to quickly highlight that you may not have thought about, and that's that if all advertisers went with broad targeting, open targeting, or as many advertisers as possible did, that's better for Meta. Meta have all this ad inventory that they want to be able to fill. They have all these, at this point, billions of Facebook and Instagram users, and they are on the platform and Meta wants to fill every single possible slot it can with an ad that's available. If advertisers get really specific with their targeting, then Meta's only going to be able to put ads in front of those people, and they're not going to be able to fill ad inventory for all those other people that perhaps advertisers are less interested in reaching because they typically purchase less, etc., right? So this is within Meta's interest, and whenever Meta makes a recommendation, you always have to think, is that in my interest as an advertiser or Meta's interest as a platform? Often those are the same things, right? Because Meta wants us to get good results, because if us advertisers get good results, then we spend more, Meta makes more money. But every now and then there will be recommendations where you think, I'm not sure that's better for advertisers, I think that's just better for Meta. This recommendation is definitely better for Meta. I do think in most scenarios, it is also better for advertisers as well. And we can verify that because we've been able to test it. Over a number of years, we've been able to test going with more open targeting, broad targeting options versus more specific. And the trend has definitely been towards the open broad targeting producing better results for us advertisers as well. So it does overlap, but it's just an important thing to note of, okay, how important is this recommendation? Who does this serve? And this applies to this recommendation versus all the other ones that you may see within an ad account or documentation that Meta provides. I recently polled my audience, for example, and I asked them, what's your best performing cold audience targeting option? And I gave a few different options: broad, lookalikes, interest, etc. And broad was the best performer of the options, but it wasn't like 90% of advertisers see their best results from broad targeting. There are a number of people that said, no, I see my best results from lookalikes. I see my best results from detailed targeting options. So it's important to test and not just always go with the recommendation. Now, there is something else that I want to show you when it comes to audience size that has changed recently, and I think is very interesting. Before I do that, I want to quickly let you know about our done for you Facebook and Instagram advertising services. So my company can create, manage and optimize your ad campaigns for you. We can take that workload off your hands. We can hopefully help you get much better results. If you're interested, click on the link in the video description below. That'll take you to a page on a website where you can book in a free call with one of my team members, and hopefully we get a chance to work together. So what is this extra audience size change that I'm talking about? So I've jumped in an example ad account. I've just created a quick example campaign. I've jumped to the ad set level to demonstrate this. Now, I haven't adjusted any of the targeting here. If we scroll down, you can see it'll just be set to basically all of the UK by default. And we can see we've got this estimated audience size over here on the right. Now, if I go ahead and hover over this little eye to get more information, the change that has been made is that instead of giving estimated audience sizes based on how many total Facebook and Instagram users fall within that category, those targeting options. So let's say, for example, how many total Facebook and Instagram users are there in the UK? How many accounts are there? Meta have tweaked this so that it only includes people that have been served an ad within the last 30 days. And you can see they've got the information here, right? So estimated audience size based on a number of factors, yada, yada, yada. It's based on factors such as targeting selections, ad placements, and how many account center accounts, so Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts, etc., were shown ads on Meta apps and services in the past 30 days. Now, what this does is it filters out those inactive accounts, of which there must be hundreds of millions, if not billions at this point, because Meta has so many users and people obviously come to the platform, they leave it. It sounds a bit morbid, but there must be hundreds of millions of people that have had Facebook accounts, Instagram accounts that are simply no longer with us. So these sorts of numbers for all sorts of reasons are changing all the time, and they've adjusted, as I said, not just to include the total number of users, but to include just the ones that are active and have been served ads within the last 30 days. Now, in an example like the UK, just targeting the whole of the UK, that hasn't actually changed the audience size all that much. You can see that the people who have who are using Facebook and Instagram are using it. They typically don't set up an account and then not use it for years and give up on it. They're either using one of those two social platforms fairly regularly. So this audience size hasn't changed that much, but we have seen in certain targeting setups, the estimated audience size has decreased quite a bit because it's filtering out those inactive accounts. So if you've been through this video and you thought, okay, well, my audience is well over 2 million, that's absolutely fine, I don't need to make any adjustments, go in and check if your estimated audience size has shrunk, has changed to reflect that change to only include active accounts that are being served ads, because it may well have come down quite a bit. And I've had a few messages about this and wanted to adjust it. So I think it's a good tweak for Meta. I think it makes it more useful for us advertisers in terms of estimating our audience size and being able to predict and plan and adjust things, but it is just something that you need to be aware of. So as we can see from this documentation, Meta is really pushing broad targeting. And that is sometimes the best way to go, but it's not always the best way to go. There are scenarios where you do want to use it and scenarios where you don't want to use it, and I explain those in this video here. In that video, I'll walk you through all the pros and cons of broad targeting, otherwise known as open targeting, give you scenarios for yes, go ahead and give it a go, or no, you probably want to wait. So I'd strongly recommend, if you are interested in testing broad targeting or anything along those lines, that you check this out.